Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.
As a first-time parent, do you remember the idealistic dreams and ideas that you had about parenting while your baby was in vitro, only to find out that it was a whole different ballgame once that baby was out? My first child was 7 weeks premature and spent his first 7 weeks in hospital. Not the perfect story that I had in mind. Why did no one tell us? Or perhaps they did, and we didn't want to know. We weren't listening. A wise decision, because perhaps if we knew the many struggles of parenthood, we might not have had kids. Don't get me wrong, I've done it twice. Parenthood, that is, and I have no regrets at all. But in all honesty, the journey of parenthood for the first time is an exhilarating yet bewildering experience. There is so much unwanted advice stemming from well-meaning family members and friends, and that vast realm of online information often leaves you as a parent in a state of confusion. Now, wading through these suggestions to find your own parenting style that resonates with the new dynamics of your family can feel like a monumental task. Welcoming a new baby not only brings immeasurable joy, but it can also cast a strain on the relationship between partners. Adapting to the roles of parenthood requires couples to ensure that they have open communication and unwavering support for each other during this intense transition. I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones that you care about the most. Today I'm talking to Rob Mason. Rob has an academic background with a PhD in education, a Masters of Teaching, a Bachelor of Arts, Honours in Psychology, and a Bachelor of Music. A grand total of 10 years dedicated to high learning. Last week, Rob and I discussed his professional life, coaching coaches in how to give feedback and receiving feedback. This week, we're talking about the reality of using this communication knowledge in his family life, as he and his partner are now viewing life through the lens of first-time parents and partners. If you're a parent, can you remember these challenges? Rob will share with us today that applying the theories of feedback can be a whole different ballgame when you find yourself navigating the tumultuous waters of sleep deprivation, looking after a sick toddler, and just getting through the day without killing each other. It's a scenario that many of us can relate to, the juggling act of theory versus reality. Hi Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me from one Mason to another. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to be in the Mason clan. Now, last week we were looking at your skills and knowledge in the professional arena of sport, and today we're going to look and see how these communication skills transfer over into home and the parenting skill set. Now, we're going to begin with your wife Chelsea's favourite saying at home is, "You did your bloody PhD in communication, and it's about time you started using it." So how hard is that theory around communication, i.e. giving feedback and receiving it, to put into practice when you're faced with challenges like sleep deprivation, new routines, sick toddlers, and you're either actually too tired or just have no time to concentrate on your partner?
Yeah, they're all the excuses I'd normally go for, okay? So you probably ticked off 6 of 10. It's theory into practice. When the rubber meets the road, it's a little bit harder than, the textbooks might say it is. Mm-hmm. I spend a fair bit of time listening to coaches in high-pressure situations like the coach's box. And we found some variables that impact how positive or negative they are, for example. So the scoreboard has a massive influence on how the coaches act, and then you come home and there's other scoreboards at play, like how many dirty nappies are sitting in the laundry sink waiting to be washed, and there are all those other pressure levers that impact on a performer, in this case not a coach but a parent, that make it more challenging to give best practice feedback and communicate proactively, which is an interesting thing to reflect on in my profession.
A very, very interesting thing, because what you're coming home to is often someone who, like we had just discussed it before the podcast, someone who's been sitting there all day. They're either breastfeeding or changing nappies, and they're tied to this one tiny human, And unless they manage to offload to a relative or something, that is their day. Their day is literally taken over. And as I was saying before, if you're an extrovert and you really like being out, not at home, really stressful on top of all those things. I always used to get out as often as I could because I found that very stressful time for myself. But also the fact that you probably haven't talked to an adult quite often, not face to face, and you're building up this stress as a caregiver. You can hardly wait for that other person to get home. And then they get home and they go, oh, I'm really tired. I had a really tough day at work. And you just want to throw the baby and the dirty nappies at them. How do you find that reaction when you get home? Or are you now a new man, or you go in and wash the nappies straight away? What happens for you?
Look, it's been a journey, is what I would say. I think early days I would come home being like, I've been at work for 8 hours. I deserve to put my feet up for a bit. And that didn't last very long. No. I didn't realize just quite how taxing it was to look after a little human for that amount of time. And, coming into this year where we'll have a day off during the week, I'll be daddy daycare 1 day out of 5. So I'm sure I've obviously looked after our son for extended periods before, but to actually do it on a scheduled kind of, weekly setup so that Chelsea can get back to work and, find that sense of purpose that an occupation brings. It'll be really interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, because my job can be quite physical and, you're running around an oval in the heat sometimes, you get home and all you want to do is jump in a shower and, grab some food, and then you've got an excited little human who's waving at the front window, and you've got to put yourself last, which is, I think an adjustment that has been made, hopefully.
Yeah. And so what's, when you come in, do you automatically go into help now? And do you automatically go into, right now, Chels, how's your day been? What's something I can do for you? Or are you still at the... Yeah. Because as, when you're sitting there, often you're ready to explode, as the child carer. So have you worked out any techniques in that?
Yeah, we had a good run there for a while last year where Chelsea would book in for an exercise class pretty much half an hour after I finished work. So for me, it was a good way to snap out of work and go, right, I'm needed. I need to be at the gym at this time to, grab the car with Ned in it. We'll go to a playground. And that's then, that's the transition time where Chelsea's gone from basically slave to small human into actual human being with their own, needs again.
Identity.
Yeah. So yes. For Chelsea, I think that was a nice way of kind of easing back into, being herself again. It kind of depends on the day as well. Like some days are easier than others. You get home because our days start so early. Often I'm home at 3:30, 4 o'clock, which helps because you can then kind of run around with Ned in the backyard while Chelsea does her own thing. So it's no day's the same as the last or will ever be the same as the next, but you just kind of make it up as you go, right?
No, you do. And I think that as you go along, it's really, really important. I mean, have you done love languages?
No, have not.
No. Okay, that's a number one step for you.
Right. I look forward to
it. Because really, you actually have to know your partner, even better than you did before. Because these are the times that I think are going to be the most stressful for you. Well, parenthood is just a long, stressful, exciting, but different. And like you say, every stage changes. But it really pays to know and understand your partner. And that's where I always say, save my marriage. And, I'm sitting here in 40 years, of marriage. It saved me because I understood where the anger came from, how it was related, how it came out. And he understood what I was like. And even though we got angry and we have fights and we still do, we still bicker, but it really made a difference to our relationship with having children as well, because you're both very different parents too. You'll do different things as parents, and things like love language actually teach you that perhaps the way you think you're showing your love to Chelsea isn't actually the way she's thinking that she'd like to be cared about. So there's all of these factors that I find just come into life, stuff like that, because my thing is, how do you deal with your relationship with your partner? Because you want it to last, it's got to be, and like you say, open communication, so important. Were there any unexpected challenges that you actually had no idea would happen?
Oh, definitely. We got some good advice from a GP while, we were going through the pregnancy stuff, and she said, basically, don't read too many books about parenting because you'll freak yourself out and everyone's got a different opinion on what to do. So I actually still to this day have not read cover to cover a book on parenting. And I think that's helped me to be a little bit more responsive to Ned and to kind of look for what he needs rather than to try and fit his behaviour to some kind of mental model that I've got of how he should be behaving. I think for Chels as well, there's a lot of parenting stuff on social media now as well. And it's kind of, there's a bit of pressure to be the perfect parent and to, have a perfect household. And for us, we had a chat a couple of months ago around, it's actually okay if we have some arguments along the way because it's bloody stressful raising a kid. So, don't feel like we're doing a really terrible job if we do, have an argument about something. It just means that A, we're passionate about something, and B, we're in a pretty stressful time, and that, sometimes it's to do with the environment more so than either of us as individuals. So I think that's been a pretty big learning for us to try and be a little bit less perfect, I think, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. That makes a lot of sense. And the other thing about arguments, as long as you're not slamming each other and you're managing to end the argument well and you're looking at each other's needs, arguments, most people argue. Look, I do a lot of relationship work, and to tell the truth, the people that sit in a relationship and don't talk about anything are the ones that often break up because nobody's said anything. It's really important to get that stuff out into the air and talk about it, and then decide what changes you're going to make so that you can be happy together rather than sit in anger or, just don't care anymore. So it is really important. And when I was younger, a friend of mine said to me, she and her husband had this deal that from 10 until 7 the next morning, you didn't hold your partner to anything they said during that time in the night, whether they swore at you, whether they were whatever. She said you had to cut that out and just pretend it didn't happen because the middle of the night is just hell sometimes. And when you're sleep deprived, you're really not in control. Sleep deprivation is a form of torture. So, you're not actually in control of your mind often or what you're saying. So it was really good. It was really good. My husband and I did that then. And we swore a lot between 10 and 7.
Get all your swearing done during the swear period. And then, I did see a saying the other day that was like, make sure you agree with your partner not to go to bed angry at each other or go to sleep angry at each other. And I haven't slept in 4 days now. It's been, really, really great. Infants have something to do with that too, right? Like
they do.
With broken sleep, as you said. Yeah. Sleep deprivation is a torture device. So
it is. It is. And the other thing
resilience.
It does. And the other thing is too, the go to bed with no anger. Sometimes you are actually just so annoyed that when you go to bed, you wake up so much better in the next morning rather than resolve that conflict. So I don't always agree with that. I mean, I understand the concept, but sometimes, if my husband's annoyed, I just go, just go. And he goes and he wakes up great the next morning. So it's better off not to have that conflict resolution the night before. So you have to play it how it really suits you. And I think that's the most important thing is I always say to people, don't listen to anyone else. Listen to yourself. Listen to what you feel. And of course, we all have, parents who tell us how to parent and relatives who tell us how to parent. So how do you handle those people?
We're really lucky. We've got a pretty good support network who let us do our own thing, which is cool. My parents are down in Tasmania, so we don't see as much of them. But when we're down there, they're very, obviously they're at the airport terminal ready to jump on him and give him a big hug, but also aware that, we're doing our own thing. And Chelsea's parents are 5 minutes up the road. So, we see heaps of them, and Ned's learning to swim in their pool at the moment, which has been really cool. And so... it's been great to have that kind of support network around to help us, but also to allow us to kind of make our own decisions and make our own mistakes along the way as well, and figure out, where, Ned doesn't have any cousins around the same age as him at the moment. So he's kind of the first of this part of the generation, I guess. So there's a lot of attention on him. And I know once the second comes out, whoever that may be, not putting any pressure on anyone who might be listening, but that'll change things as well. But yeah, we've had a pretty good time. We've been pretty lucky with the support network around us.
That's great, because often there is it can be quite overwhelming when people tell you what you should do and how you should be doing things. So
Yeah.
that's really good to hear, because I think it just makes parenting easier when no one tells you, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Now, were there any parenting myths that you discovered weren't true once you became a father? Like, was there anything that you had in your head that you thought would be, oh, this is going to be amazing, and it hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I've tried to jump in headfirst to parenting and change the poopy nappies, and obviously while Ned was being breastfed, I couldn't do much in the way of feeding him overnight, but to be able to get up and get him and pass him into Chelsea, who might be still half asleep, being able to do all of those things, I think helped, because sometimes you stand around, particularly in the maternity ward, there's not an awful lot you can do other than provide some encouragement and maybe some water.
And usually they tell you to get lost.
Yeah. I think they were actually worried that I was going to pass out. I think they took me for a bit of a squeamish sort. So they just propped me up against the wall and said, just stay there, mate. So from that moment on, I thought, you know what, I'm going to be as involved as I can. So I think not necessarily a myth, but probably just some assumptions that I made around, the gender roles involved with parenting. And sometimes I do assume that Chelsea will do something just because, she's the mum. Like, I think it's probably just a hangover from the breastfeeding days, is that, she'll be the one to give the bottle at night, that kind of thing. But trying to balance that out and make sure that, Ned's aware that I can do that too. Yeah, he's okay with it now. Like, we had that kind of transition period where it was like, Dad, with the bottle? Like, what's going on there? But it's all, parenting is just transition period to transition period, really, isn't it? Like, nothing's ever permanent. It's always only a week away from the next thing.
It is. And when you're talking about feedback and that, how do you give your feedback to Chelsea about her parenting, and how does she give it to you? What's your best feedback method? Have you worked that out between the pair of you yet? Like, without you being patronizing or condescending or anything like that. Have you guys worked out how to have that conversation? You've done a great job, or I really appreciate you doing this. Is there a feedback that that she prefers and that you prefer?
I think my first lesson was to not lecture Chelsea on how to give feedback. Here I am with my PhD under my arm, like, next time you give that feedback, could you? That's when the patronising and condescending comes out, and that doesn't help anyone. I don't know. I've experimented with asking, are you okay for some feedback? And, having a conversation when we're both calm and, we're not trying to have a pretty, crucial discussion in the middle of a tantrum or a poopy nappy flowing around the house. So picking the moment has definitely been something that I've worked on. I think we'll often talk about things once Ned's down for the night, which helps as well, because you kind of have that moment to reflect, and we get maybe an hour on the couch to ourselves at the end of the day. Sometimes we don't have the energy to chat at all. It's just chuck something on telly, but that might be the space to do it, I think. But yeah, Chelsea's pretty hard on sleeve. So I know normally if I've done something to upset her, and we can knock it on the head pretty quick.
It's good though. It's good to get it out of the way and deal with it fast, rather than sitting there festering, for 3 months. Or you didn't kind of do that for me. So if you could go back and give yourself any advice before what you felt about it, the whole thing before becoming a father, what might it be?
Probably just to be more confident. I think I can be a bit of an overanalyzer at times. I think it's probably the academic background. Like, where's the 7 peer-reviewed meta-analyses that will tell me whether I should do this or not? It's like, kids are pretty resilient. Like, you can drop them on their head and they're going to be okay. Not that I'd recommend that, or
we won't do that.
Let's absolutely not. It's not what I'm suggesting at all. But they're pretty resilient things, and they'll tell you what they like and what they don't like. So just it's a little bit less thinking and a little bit more doing would probably be the advice that I give myself from 2 years ago, just before he entered the world.
Yes. Yeah. And so were you scared about the whole prospect, or really super excited? And then when it came along, it's like, whew, this is huge.
Yeah, probably a little bit, like equal amount scared and excited, I think. That first night, like when Ned was born, there were still some COVID restrictions in the hospitals. So we decided to go through the public system. And so that night when Ned was born, it was just Chelsea and Ned in the hospital, and I had to go home and just kind of take the calls throughout the night being like, this is bloody impossible. And so that feeling of helplessness, I guess, which was the scariest bit. But, you know, having them home and, you know, that first night we're in our own space, just kind of, that all kind of disappeared. It still comes up every now and then. Like I travel a bit for work. And so, you know, we have a week-long camp pre-season, and that's always tough to say goodbye for that period. And you sit with the guilt of not being around. But yeah, it swings and roundabouts. Like we get a really decent off-season period of leave where I just get to hang out with the family all day, which is really cool.
Yeah. So how do you cope with that week off? How does Chelsea cope with that week off? Does she got a good network of people that she hangs out with?
Yeah, she's got some great mum friends and non-mum friends. Her parents 5 minutes up the road who, you know, couldn't do more, always wanting to help out, that kind of thing. So yeah, she leans on them a fair bit during that week, and, you know, try and get a FaceTime in each morning and say hello. And we've also got a pretty good support network of, you know, first-time dads around the football club as well. So there's one guy who's actually born on the same day as me, same year, same day, and he's got a kid like born within the same week. So we're on the same kind of life trajectory.
Yes,
so we compare notes on that side of things all the time, because we're on the same kind of travel schedule, and which has been really, really useful. I think it takes a village, right? That's the saying.
It does. And it's really handy to have someone who is traveling through the same kind of thing as you, because my husband kind of never talked about the kids very much, and he'd be saying to me, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this. And I'd say to him, every other kid their age is actually doing that, you know, like, but because I talk to people and I go out with friends who got kids the same age, I knew, but he didn't know. So understanding that most kids are actually pretty similar with developmental stages a lot of the time, and that when they're at that screaming and teething stage, usually the child that you're going to be talking to, the father, he's probably going to be going through the same thing. So it is really great to have that discussion with other parents. And I think that's a really important thing for dad parents too, is to have that network for themselves, because I don't think males necessarily do. I think they're getting better at it, but I don't always think they do. You know, to go, oh my goodness, my wife is so upset, she's like this, blah, blah, blah. And explaining that to someone else and getting it off your chest is a really great thing too. So
100%.
Male friendships.
I mean, there's mothers groups all around the place. We actually, a couple of mates and we've caught up 2 or 3 times. We're calling ourselves Dadelaide. You know, it's like the dad's parenting group. We get together with the kids. You know, the mums get the morning off to go and sit in the coffee shop and have some mum time, and, you know, we'll just go and catch up. And, you know, one day we went to the park and had a can of Coke and talked about being a dad. You know, there's kind of a varying age range within there too. So it's nice to be able to see a few months forward and a few months back, just to be like, I remember when we were at that stage, like that was really tough, and to kind of empathize there, but also to look forward a couple of months and go, oh gee, that doesn't sound like much fun when they drop that midday nap and suddenly you haven't got, time to clean the house.
Time.
Before.
No, that's right. Yeah. I hated
time to do
that.
anything really. No.
All of a sudden they're with you all day and it's like, oh really? Do I have to have this?
Yeah. This is life now.
That's right. Yeah. Bummer. So it's kind of like, no, I totally understand that. So, you know, in fact, you could probably do a Dad Adelaide. I bet that you would actually find a huge network if you put that out as a group. You know, I'm not saying that you have to, but I'm just saying it would be really interesting, you know, for males to actually have a bit more of a hangout and get to discuss all these things, because I think it's equally important for them to do that, you know, in the same way.
Yeah.
So really, thanks for sharing your first time parenting journey, and thank you, Chelsea, for letting Rob share the different bits. And I'm sure there are parts there that we haven't heard, but we're all aware that it actually does take 2 to tango. You know what? And if you educate yourself about communication skills and use them, it's really important. But the most important thing is being able to forgive each other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Argue well, and speak to each other the next day, and work out how to love each other so you feel loved. So thank you. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for being here.
I hope it's been as useful for you as it has been for me. That's been great. Thanks, Kate.
In this phase of life, navigating the intricate landscape of personalities and love languages is so important. Believe me, I have proof of it. It's a stage where comprehending not just your own coping mechanisms, but also those of your partner is crucial. As you explore parenting, disparities in styles might appear. requiring a much deeper understanding from both of you. So this is where the wealth of knowledge about your partner comes into play. It's a time when knowing each other inside and out is not just beneficial, it's almost necessary. When you're depleted of energy, patience, and at times even love, it becomes essential to be able to lean on this reservoir of understanding. It's about meeting each other's needs in the midst of life's chaos, finding consolation in the familiarity of your partner's quirks, and navigating the unpredictable journey of parenthood, not head to head, but hand in hand. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who Is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, Jeremy Cordeaux in the Court of Public Opinion. I'm just on air here to let you know that we'll be live streaming the Court of Public Opinion every Friday between 9 o'clock and 12 on jeremycordeaux.com. Please join us. We'd love to have you.